Hello, it's Matt from GAK, and I'm here with Tor from TC Electronic, and we've got a little exclusive for you today. We are talking mini pedals. They've got a whole new range, I would say, of their pedals in kind of miniature form. So we've got mini shaker, mini Corona. At least shaker, so I could shake that one. I just realised, and I was like, oh, hold on, am I? Mini Flashback and mini Vortex. So I suppose the first question is, with going for mini pedals, was it kind of sort of on the trend, or had you always thought you were going to do mini pedals, or what was the kind of idea behind making them smaller?
I think it started when we decided to do Polytune Mini because of the basic fact that people seem to be moving towards smaller pedal boards, and the tuner is really a place where you can actually save some pedal board real estate. So we decided to make that one smaller, and then we did Ditto Looper, which has been a tremendous success for us.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I plugged one in, I was on one for like 10 minutes. This is just, it's so small. And I've had one on my board ever since because it just sits in the corner and
it doesn't take up any space at all. And I think there are certain effects for guitar players that that really matter, where it's okay that they have a certain size. Yeah. But for a lot of the pedals we have on our boards, you only use them for one or two songs. And if you have like a giant flanger, for example, really doesn't make a lot of sense if you only use it for like the solo in one song. So it's nice to have pedals that you use a little more, sporadically, have them smaller.
Yeah, and I find now as well, I'm dealing a lot of pedals in store with a lot of customers that people kind of have like on the fly pedal boards now. Like I've got a couple of customers who have their like Pedal Train Pro. Like we were saying, I've got my massive pedal board with like 20 pedals on, but I kind of have a smaller one to kind of take around. So it's nice that you can kind of just get everything on like a tiny pedal board and away you go, really.
Yeah, and exactly. And even if let's say you have your big pedal board and you go like, oh shit, it would really be nice to have so I need another delay just to have a slapback. Instead of buying a new one with like, big pedal board real estate again, you can have your main delay and then you can have something like this for just one basic delay sound that you
or a sound that you use all the time. So you're like, well, I always just want one really good analog sound I'm just going to have on all the time, but then I want my other ones for doing some weird stuff. That's kind of nice. So with these then, so we've got like the Vortex. Let's go for the Flashback because I love delay. So what are you losing out anything on this? Is there what's different compared to the full size one?
I think the main thing is that we didn't want to compromise of any of the main features, and specifically we didn't want to compromise on sound quality. So sound quality wise, algorithm, everything is exactly the same as the original Flashback and the Flashback X4. They're identical in terms of sound. So you still get true bypass as well, analog drive-through, all the things that we're known for, and you get the TonePrint feature, which I guess we'll be discussing a little bit.
Yeah. We've I don't know if you can see it on screen, but we've got the TonePrint editor as well, which is something that I really enjoyed delving into because it was the first time that it was kind of easy for someone to like make your own sounds. I know. Yeah, exactly.
But so what you lose out, so to speak, is very few things. So I'd like to see it as the distilled or this, the distilled version. You still get all the good stuff. It's just smaller. So the main things that are different is it's mono in out, not stereo. Yeah. You can't operate it through a battery because the pedal's actually too small to hold a 9-volt battery. And you don't get the subdivision. No, sorry, the subtype selector. Okay. So on the its bigger brothers, all the bigger brothers of these pedals, they have a few different TC design sounds. So in the case of Flashback, we have a selector that lets you choose between a 2290 digital delay, an analog delay, modulated delay. These only have one delay or one flanger or one chorus at a time, but you can actually change them to all the different sounds that you get on the bigger brothers using the TonePrint software.
Well, I think that's the thing is, a lot of people, when the Hall of Fame came out to me, were like, oh yeah, but it's only got one sound. And I was like, well, how I would use it was just put the sound that you want and just leave it in the effects loop on your amp and stick it on the top. And I'd sort of have the same with this on, like we were just saying, just have one sound that you kind of set up and away you go, and you can always step on that. But I suppose imagine quite with the TonePrint as well, quite cool for recording because you can have it sitting on your desk and you can sort of mess around with some sounds.
Change the sound all you want, but the thing is, if you look at, I get the fact that more wants more. So if you have the option of having all these different sounds, you want them available to you. But on the other hand, if you look at most pedals available, they only do one sound. If you buy another delay pedal, there's the sound.
Well, I mean, I've had plenty of different bits of gear over the time, and you get stuff with tons of presets in, and actually half the time you find just one good sound.
Yeah.
And that's the way you go. So that's the nice thing about these, because all the tone prints that you guys have done are really good. And it's nice that you can edit them yourself, but it's just that you can just set it up and away you go, and it's just there really. So what we should do is probably like plug it in, and then we can run through each one, and we can go through a couple of the tone prints and stuff. So we've got, just so the guys at home know, so we're running into a PV Classic 50 with a 57 custom shop total tone strat, which is really nice. And we've got a little pedal board here, which is amazing because everything's on there in one board. So yes, plug it in and give it a listen. So here we are with the TC amazing little mini pedal board. I'm amazed that everything kind of just nicely fits onto one board.
Yeah, you'd think it was on purpose. It's actually pure luck. This is our entire range of mini pedals just magically fits on a pedal train mini.
You basically just thought, right, we need to fit everything on a pedal train mini. So just for people at home, we've got obviously the 4 that are already out. So the amazing Polytune Mini, the little Spark Booster Mini, the Hoff, which is the Hall of Fame Mini, which came out last year, and the Ditto Looper. And then kind of the other 4 that have now been shrunk down into miniature size.
The new guys.
Yeah. I mean, they just look proper. I don't know other way to put it. They just look really classy compared to, some other ones out there.
Thank you. It's funny you mentioned that, because we actually spent quite a bit of time designing the knobs so that they were small, but they felt like real knobs. It makes a big difference as to how.
They feel. I mean, I know it's difficult to sometimes see on camera, but they do really feel like. They feel good, they feel like they've got some decent grip in there. They're not sliding around or anything. Let's start at the end. So we'll start with the shaker. So vibrato. So do you want to just, for people who may not have heard the other one, just run through kind of what it does and what controls you've got on the front?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pitch vibrato, so it's basically what an opera singer or a guitar player does when they, wiggle the note, for lack of a better term. And there's 3 controls on there. There's a speed knob that controls how fast you bend the note. There's a depth knob, which is how wide or how far you bend the pitch. And the last one is called a ramp control. And this is the same thing that a guitar player or a singer would do when they basically vibrato. You don't just start vibratoing erratically right away, kind of like this. You typically ease into it like this.
It gives it more expression.
Yeah, expression and a little more taste, I guess. You can always tell when a beginner starts doing vibrato like that, and you go like, ugh.
It's a bit like a sheep. Yeah. constantly warbling like that.
So just so you can hear what that does to begin with, now I set the ramp all the way down, so when I engage the effect, it's going to start the full-on vibrato right away. So I'll just do this. Let's try that again. I'll do this again. So there's the warble starts right away.
Yeah, straight in.
Now I'll crank up the ramp time, and I'll engage the effect again. Oops, and turn on.
Makes it a little bit more. In a way, it makes it a little bit more subtle.
Yeah. And it goes from 0 milliseconds up to 5 seconds, so you can control exactly how far you want that ease in time to be. And beside from that, it's a really, really nice pedal, I think, for adding some texture without getting too lush and 80s like. I like the 80s, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you want something that adds a bit of texture to your sound without getting that kind of swimmy kind of sound that you can get from a chorus or a flanger.
Yeah, and it's very different to those sort of effects. It's like I say, it's a little bit more subtle, and like I say, it just adds more. I don't know, it kind of adds a bit more warmth as well. Almost feel there's like more bottom end in there, and it's kind of just like giving everything this nice shimmer rather than like you say an 80s chorus that's kind of just like swamping everything.
So different types of settings. You can do something that's quite slow, which I like, where it's just like subtly bending the notes. So I'll do this, and you can do. Which I like, or you can do something that's kind of in the middle, which is the typical kind of vibrato when you think of vibrato. Or you can crank up the speed and back down the depth a bit for getting that type of pseudo kind of Leslie type.
Yeah. I can almost imagine it working in the effects loop of an amp as well, and you can kind of, if you have got an amp without a vibrato channel, for example, it's kind of nice almost to give it just that extra bit of like depth, really.
It's a really good point, and I should say now that you mentioned that all these pedals, like the bigger brothers, they're designed to work equally well in a effect loop as well as in front of the amp. So they have massive headroom, so they won't clip or dip the signal or anything like that.
And obviously, as we'll get to later, obviously each one's TonePrint enabled, so you can download artist presets and you can create your own.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's move on to the second one, which is the Corona chorus. Everyone loves a bit of chorus, especially me. So yeah, what's different maybe to the bigger one? What are you? What have you got in terms of controls on the front?
You basically have the same controls as you have on the bigger brother. The only thing that's missing is the tone control on the big Corona chorus. So apart from that, you get the same thing. You get speed and depth, which is again how much wiggle and how much out of tuneness do you want, and then you have a mix control, which you don't find on a lot of chorus pedals, which I think is a shame because sometimes the chorus effect is nice if you just use it subtly.
So it is generally a lot of times with these sort of things, it is all about subtlety. It makes much more of a difference having it lower in the mix than it does having it all the way to full.
Exactly, and I think the effects level or the mix control really does that. And a lot of people don't know that, but TC actually started, the very first pedal we ever did around 36 years ago was a chorus pedal.
Oh wow. That's even new information for me, is it?
So, and that pedal, it's a classic pedal called the Stereo Chorus Flanger, and it's still been used by guys like Eric Johnson. And we basically took the same algorithm, and that's an analog pedal, obviously, because it's so old.
Yeah.
But we took the same algorithm and recreated it in the digital domain for this. So that's one of the sounds you can get, and when you buy the pedal, that's the sound you get right out of the box.
Cool. Let's plug it. Let's have a couple of chords and let's go from there. See, that is really nice and rich and lush sounding without sound. Because I think a lot of people get put off by chorus, like you say, because sometimes of the 80s kind of thing. Yeah. It's like, chorus on everything. But actually, that you could use that just to fatten up and beefen up a clean sound or a drive
sound. So, if you want to do like classic old Randy Rhoads style leads or rhythm stuff or Zakk Wylde, a lot of that stuff is it's artificial doubling that's done with a chorus effect, pretty much like this thing. Yeah. But if you want to do like the crazy, big fat 80s chorus, you can most certainly do that as well. You can do it with this sound, but on the bigger brother, there's a little toggle switch that allows you to change it to a tri-chorus. And with tone printing, you can change it to that as well. But I'll just do the regular chorus, like full blast now. So we'll crank up the mix, crank up the depth, and back down the speed a little bit. Let's see if that sounds decent. And then we can do a song like this.
There is only one song you can play.
You got to play that song when you do that.
But I think as well as as I was just thinking while we've got the other one here, it's nice that, like we said earlier, that they're in mini form, because for me a chorus is an effect that I probably have on all the time. But for something like that, or for an intro, or for chords, it's nice to just have a small one that you can kind of just.
Yeah, because some of the cool choruses out there are pretty big, and you only want to use it for exactly for that one Purple Rain moment. And
yeah, and I mean the thing is as well is that as with them being TonePrint enabled, just means that kind of if you're messing around with it, you can kind of just plug it in, change the sound, So, and it's like not just having one pedal; it's like having loads of different ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next one along is the Vortex flanger, which I really like because it was one of the only pedals that was available with 0-3 flanging, which kind of like the old school tape, but also because it had some more usable sounds rather than just the big jet swoosh.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite pedals for a number of reasons. First of all, I really like that old tape flanging thing. Hendrix, Zeppelin, all that stuff, or new Lenny Kravitz stuff. That's a really usable sound, I think.
Yeah.
Plus, a flanger is actually a really versatile pedal because a lot of the stuff that you think you've heard that's chorus is really a flanger.
I think one of the classics, is Andy Summers. I think used got a lot of flanger on quite a lot of bits.
That's true. It's actually, I can say that with authority because I was with Andy Summers a couple of weeks ago doing TonePrints with him.
Oh, well, there we go.
for the Vortex flanger. So.
Oh, there we go.
So
my facts are not wrong.
No. So yeah, it's just a really versatile pedal. You can use it as that old school psychedelic type sound. You can use it for that classic Jet Eddie stuff that we all know and love, or you can use it as a chorus.
Well, let's go through a couple of those sounds because, like I said, I think it's a common misconception. People think just jet swoosh, but like you say, we were messing around with it a minute ago, and it does a lot more. So let's run through a couple of the sounds that we've got on there.
Yeah. So the first thing I dial in here is it's almost like a Leslie thing because of the feedback. You can get that kind of phasey, swirly sound. So that's another use for a flanger. So let's see if I can figure out something here.
That's nice. That's like a Leslie. That would work really well with drive as well, I can imagine.
Yeah, it would. And unfortunately, we don't have any drives here. So some of the sounds that are like classic flanging sounds, like the edit stuff, won't sound right here. So I'm not going to try to play Unchained, for example. But actually, if you do set everything on the default sound up here, and you use that, that's going to get you pretty close to that.
Yeah.
Sort of famous Jet sound.
It's got that lovely metallic swoosh.
Yeah, you can hear that kind of jetty sound going in the background.
What about if we sort of maybe dial down, maybe the speed or the depth and just get something a little bit more subtle? So
we can do this, and if we back the feedback all the way off, we actually more or less turn it into a chorus. I'll give it a little bit more, just so you can actually hear that something's going on.
That's really subtle, but it really works.
It's nice. It's kind of the same sound we had on the Corona before. It's that kind of lush but very subtle chorusy sound.
It's almost a sound that you could leave it on all the time and it wouldn't be too invasive at all, anything like that. Cool. So finally, we've got to probably my highlight, I would say so far, is the Flashback Mini, because the Flashback delay was just so good, but it's so nice to just have it in a mini format, I suppose. And we've also got it hooked up to the TonePrint editor from USB here as well. So we'll go through a couple of the sounds and then we'll run through some TonePrint. So what's different on the smaller one, and what sort of sounds can we get just with the controls on there?
Well, very shortly, you can get any of the sounds that you can get on this bigger brother, and it's really big brother, the Flashback X4. It's exactly the same algorithm. Everything is identical. The only things you don't get is all the different subtypes available on the pedal itself, but you can get those through the TonePrint software. And you don't get the little toggle switch that lets you select between the different subdivisions. Yeah. So the pedal has something called audio tapping. It's too small to have 2 foot switches, but it's still nice to be able to get the delays in sync with the music. So what we do is this thing called audio tapping, and it works on Flashback Mini as well. So right now we have a delay sound going. Kind of a slow one, but let's say you have a faster song and you want to set the delay tempo to that. So you'll have your drummer going 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I mean, to have that on such a small pedal is such an advantage. I mean, that's a winning feature for me, really.
I think it's a super nice thing, and on the bigger brother, it has a little toggle switch that lets you select between quarter notes, dotted 8 notes, and quarter notes plus dotted 8 notes. On the Mini, you get quarter notes, which is the most usable setting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most common one, and to be honest, like you say, with the TonePrint editor, you can obviously you can dial some more. So, I mean, obviously most people know, what delay and feedback and effects level does. So why don't we mess around with some of the stuff on the TonePrint editor to give us an idea of what sort of thing we can do?
So if we look over here, basically it's we've hooked up the pedal with the USB, and the TonePrint editor is a way to redesign the pedal exactly the way you want it. So it really lets you become the pedal designer. So over here on this side, there's a bunch of different parameters you can tweak around. Some of them you have access to on the pedal. Some of them, or most of them, you don't have. So right now we have a tape echo-like sound. No, actually we have a. Let's see that. I'll load one of the.
And it's nice just to have all of that just on screen. And it's the first time that I've really ever seen something and used something that's been so usable.
It is usable, and it's a ton of fun. It's quite addictive once you get the hang of it. Over here on this side, I'm pointing in real, with my finger. That doesn't work on camera. Over here, we have a bunch of different templates. So if you want a starting point, let's say you want a tape echo, you basically just select one of the different ones we have here, and I selected tape. So hopefully you'll hear this kind of sound. So you can hear this kind of narrow bandwidth.
Yeah, and as it starts to degrade over the amount of repeats.
Exactly. So let's say that you want to make that slightly darker. Mm-hmm. We have an EQ section here, so I can back the highs down a bit. So hopefully you can hear the difference. Or I can do it even more.
It's almost like tape age in a way. Like the older a tape gets on that, the darker and sort of quicker they tend to fade out.
And we have both highs and lows, so you can tailor that exactly the way you want it. We also have some saturation, which is basically what happens if you hit a tape really hard. It starts to not distort, but just break up a little bit. So if I crank that up, first of all, it's going to be louder. But apart from that, it's also going to saturate a bit. So it gets kind of granular.
You can almost use that, I suppose, as a gain control for kind of replicating like an echoplex type thing as well, because you're famous for kind of a little bit more oomph to your sort of guitar signal as well.
Exactly. So now we have something that's quite dark and old school sounding. So let's try, just for the fun of it, to change to something entirely different, like a tri-chorus sound. So this is a pretty clean delay with some modulation going on. So it's basically taking the tri-chorus from the Corona and putting it only on the delay repeats, not on the dry guitar signal. And nothing happened. Edit. Oh, wait a second. I'll try this. Is it? That's weird. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Are you going to come back to the pedals at all, or are we just going to finish it by looking at the editor? I don't think we'll need to come back to them. At the end, I might just hold up the board and we'll hold up a couple of those.
Okay, fine. In that case, I'll put that and then we'll just finish this off with the editor. If you want to do the last thing that you want to do on there, I'll just left the audio running, leave that screen cap running for now, and I'll splice it in.
Cool. Okay, so let's try that again.
Yeah.
We were here. So let's switch to the to a modulation one. So this is a tri-chorus. So it's basically taking the entire modulation block that you have with Vortex, Corona, and Shaker. It's all in here, and you can add that to the delay channel only, or the delay signal only. So
that's amazing, really. So you can just kind of add on any sort of modulation, because sometimes it's just like a generic chorus or something like that, but it's actually the ones taken from the other pedals.
So if you want to put tape flanging on the delay repeats, which is the classic house burning down Hendrix sound, you can do that using the editor. So now I switch to a modulation one, so it's totally different from what I played before.
It's almost like having two pedals on at once, but everything's coming straight from the Flashback.
So this is the sound part of it. That's controlling how the delays sound, but the other part of making a pedal is deciding what the knobs do and what the range of the knobs is, and you can do that with the editor as well, and that's why we kind of see it as designing a whole pedal, because over here you have access to all the knobs that are on Flashback Mini in this case, and so let's pick the delay time. So right now you'll notice that there's a curve going here from 20 milliseconds up to 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Let's say that I want to change that curve. I can then grab this and I can crank it all the way up to 7 seconds. And this actually means that when I dial the knob, it will go not from 20 milliseconds to 2 seconds as it did before, but now it's going to increase drastically once I hit this, the last part of the curve of the knob. And I can totally change that the way I want to. So I can basically tailor the sound and the way the knob reacts.
Yeah, so you can literally, like, you can see, you can actually change the actual curve, so almost as you're turning the knob, how you actually want it to react. Exactly. So you could even add like spikes in and have it go up at one point.
Super weird. If I wanted to do like, I don't know if you know that, but the classic DM2 from Boss, it's done reverse. So when you crank up the delay time, it actually becomes shorter. So you can do that. You can make, you can basically create exactly the curve you want. And the 5 little points that you have here represent the minimum position of the knob, the mid position here, and the max, and these are in between. So that would be, I would say, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that's not even that, because you can also change what the knob does. Let's say that you always use 400 milliseconds of delay time. I'd never use anything but that. And you go, but it'd be nice to change the high cut instead. You just pick that. So now the knob doesn't control delay time anymore, it controls the high cut.
So that's amazing. So you can actually leave it on one tempo and then go from that. Does the audio tap still work for that? So if you took that off, yeah.
So you can control the tempo that way if you wanted to. You can also do something where you go like, I want to control the delay time, but I actually want to control the high cut as well. So I can assign up to 3 different parameters to the same knob. We do that internally, for example, on the analog delay, where we control the delay time, the high cut, and the saturation at the same time. So when you have longer delay times, the analog sound gets darker, which it actually doesn't in real life as well. So it's a way to really, really tailor the sound and the sound of the delay or the chorus, because this works for all the pedals exactly the way you want it. And once you're done, you press load, and it's loaded into the pedal, and it stays there for all eternity until you change it into something else.
Until 5 minutes later you decide, oh no wait, I want to change it again.
And of course, if you want to store it and work on it later, you just press the store button down here. Or I press load. I should actually say I should have pressed the store to pedal. That's how it works. But you can store that as well, and you can work on it later.
Yeah, I mean there is just so much control. I mean, but the nice thing is that you just haven't got that on anything else. That's the nice thing. You can really tailor, especially something delay, which I just love. It just means that you can. Having it on screen just makes it so much nicer to kind of edit around with, rather than scrolling through menus and this that and the other.
And if it's pedals, which we all love pedals as guitar players, I often find the fact that you try out a pedal and you go, this is awesome, but I just wish the modulation on the vibrato sound on the delays was just a little faster, or it's a little darker. All that stuff you can just do with the editor.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's just a real winner with the small pedals, because like you say, we've said you can just kind of, you might only really use a chorus for 1 or 2 songs, and it just means you can set it up the way you want it, and it sits on the pedal board. It doesn't take up too much space, but you can really tailor it exactly how you want it in the editor before you stick it on the board. Exactly. Cool.